Hi, I'm Philip, and today I'm going to show you how to set up a turntable. So I have the pro-ject Debut Carbon with me, but the process is pretty much the same for any belt drive turntable. The very first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the turntable and the surface I'm working on is level. I just have a free iPhone app here with a bubble level on it. Drop it on there. I can see that it is level, so I can put that out of the way. And then I'm going to install my drive belt. Really important that you wash your hands before doing this. The oil, sweat, greases on our hands can deteriorate these belts. Then we can put the belt around the hub and around the smaller diameter portion of the pulley. That's for 33 1/3 RPM records. The larger pulley is for 45. Go back to there. And we just want to make sure it's nice and flat and even on there. And then what we're going to do is something that's not actually in the owner's manual. There's two screws here, either called floating motor screws or transport screws, that kind of secure the motor to the base. They can increase the amount of noise or hum you hear, so we recommend just removing them. Sometimes they're fine, they don't cause too much of a problem, just depending on how tight they're in there, but it really doesn't hurt to remove them, and then your motor is completely isolated from the turntable plinth, or the base. So with those out of the way, you can see the motor is kind of suspended freely. And then we can move on to installing our platter. The platter has a hole there for the spindle in the center. We're going to go ahead and line that up, drop it down, make sure it's seated all the way. We don't want any uneven gaps or anything. That looks good. We'll install the felt slip mat here. If your turntable comes with an acrylic or Delrin platter, you may not have a mat. You may just put the record directly onto the platter. If it's metal, you're going to want that felt mat on there. Next, we can move on to the cartridge and setting the tracking force for the cartridge. Many turntables, including this pro-ject, come with a pre-mounted, pre-installed cartridge. That's awesome. It saves us quite a bit of time. If your turntable doesn't, or if it does and you end up replacing the cartridge with a new one, you will have to align the cartridge. And an alignment protractor like this is really useful. You just put that over the center spindle, and then you have 2 points to align the cartridge. Cartridge mounts in the head shell with 2 screws, and what that means is that cartridge can swivel and it can move forward and back. What you want to do is line up the cartridge with the first point, get it nice and square and perpendicular with that. When you get it set to the first point, you then check it to the second point. If it's at an angle, right, if it was square with the first point but it's at an angle with the second point, that means you need to either move the cartridge forward or back in the head shell. It takes quite a bit of trial and error, and you just kind of have to take your time and play with it. But if you take your time and make really small incremental adjustments, just line it up with the 2 points and you'll be set. With that out of the way, we can set the tracking force. This Ortofon 2M Red has a recommended tracking force of about 17.5. Every different cartridge has a different recommended tracking force. So we're going to go ahead and set that now. The counterweight that is included with the pro-ject has this nice number dial on there. Go ahead and install that onto the back of the tone arm with the numbers facing forward so you can see them. And tracking force is how much force the stylus, or that needle right there, pushes down into the grooves of the record to read the information. Too heavy or too light can both damage the record, and they're not going to sound good, so it's important to get that set correctly. What we're going to do is take the tone arm out of the holder, lower the tone arm, and we want to get that tone arm balanced. We want it perfectly level so it's not flying up or sinking down. Just move that counterweight back and forth, and you'll see it go up, you'll see it go down. We want it somewhere in the middle. Small adjustments make a big difference, so just take your time, and when you think you're getting pretty close, like that, looks good, take a look from the side, make sure it's nice and level with the platter. I'm pretty happy with that balance, so I'm going to put the tone arm back in the holder, raise the arm up, and I don't want to move this weight now. Now that it's balanced, I want to hold the weight still and spin just the number dial so the 0 lines up with the mark at the top. So we're kind of zeroing out the tone arm. Then you can set the tracking force to exactly the recommended number, which, like I said, is 17.5. And our tracking force is set. If your turntable does not come with that kind of counterweight, with a number dial on it, you will need to use a tracking force gauge. This is just an inexpensive digital tracking force gauge. You would turn it on, set it on the platter, Put your cartridge over it, line it up, and lower it, and it will give you a digital readout of the tracking force of your cartridge. Again, if your turntable does not have a numbered counterweight like that, you will need a tracking force gauge to set it to the recommended tracking force. All right, with all that out of the way, we can set our anti-skate. With the pro-ject, it is a simple little string with a loop on the end and a weight on the other, and a few different notches that are different anti-skate weight settings. For the Ortofon 2M Red, it's the middle notch is the recommended setting. So we're going to go ahead and loop that string onto that middle notch, hang the weight over, and our anti-skate weight is set. Next, I'm going to connect our signal cables. So the pro-ject includes a set of RCA cables with a ground connection on both ends. Really important that you get a good ground connection at the turntable and at your phono preamplifier or your receiver or phono input on your amp. Also, I recommend starting with the ground connection because once you plug in the RCAs, it's kind of hard to access the little ground screw. So get the screw right there, clamp it down, make sure it's good metal on metal connection, nice and secure. And with that in place, we can plug in the RCAs. White is left, red is right. And then we're ready for our power connection. There we go. And then our very last step is our dust cover. In this case, there are two hinges on the back with posts, and those line up with the holes in the dust cover. Different turntables have different designs, but most of them work on a hinge system just like that. And once you get it lined up and all the way in there, you want to make sure everything clears so you're not pinching anything. And that looks pretty good. Dust cover is for keeping dust off the record when you're not using it. When you're playing a record, for the best sound quality, you want to have that dust cover all the way open, or you can even remove it completely and set it off to the side, and then just put it on again when you're done with it. But that is the basics of how to set up a turntable. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, chat with us online, or send us an email. Thanks for watching.